Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. I apologize for not making videos. I have been sick the last week. It was awful. I feel terrible. Uh, I'm looking a little bit more human today. Not by much, but a little bit more than I was the past few days. Uh, yeah, so I didn't have the time to do little funny clips or anything like I would have liked to have done. But so this video might be a little bit more serious looking because I'm not going to have those funny clips at the moment. I just want to do a video and put it out there for you. Because this channel is just kind of a catch-all at the moment. Whatever I feel like discussing, my interest, and, well, eventually branch off and figure out how to section everything off a little bit more. So when there's a certain topic or type of media that you want to follow that I put out, that you'll be able to do so, because I mean, I'm trying to do this. I've got photography, I'm into gaming, movies, paranormal, filmography, authors, you name it. I do a little bit of everything, music, blah, blah, blah. So, but anyway, this specific post or video, I'm going to talk about the paranormal. There's a few reasons. One, it is a large interest of mine, but also I want to kind of cover the history of paranormal in general, kind of in a blanket term. Why do people believe in the paranormal to begin with? I mean, honestly, why? So, I think that's a topic that's never really discussed much. I mean, people will talk about like their personal experiences or say, yeah, but I wasn't really into paranormal or ghost at one time, and then I kind of experienced something, and then, but that's not what I'm talking about. That's what I mean. This is kind of a subject matter that no one really discusses at length, and I don't think a lot of people even really look into it anymore, or unfortunately talk about it, because it kind of ruins the perception of what they're trying to do. I mean, not in an entirety, but in a sense it does, especially when you've got these people and groups that are trying to maintain in an entertainment industry and try to come across as some kind of know-it-all paranormal. This is how it's just. But anyway, to introduce you to what I'm talking about, let's just start off with something like ghost in theory. Theoretically, why do we believe? You see all these ghost hunting groups and everything, how they interpret these methods into their so-called investigations. And I want to cover a little bit of how those methods came about, and also kind of question why we're still doing them. If that, it'll make sense a little bit if I can express it correctly. For instance, let's go back. Let's see. I just want to look and bring up dates, so people aren't like, yeah, you don't know what you're talking about, because I'm pretty sure it's the 1840s that I'm looking for. We'll see. And then, yeah, we're around that time. All right, so let's just start with the spiritual movement that picked up traction in, yeah, around the 1840s, right, you know, give or take, with the Fox sisters. Who lived in a township in New York that's no longer there. It's part of some other town. I mean, I could look up the information, but I'm just trying to express to you from the top of my head and my knowledge that I pertain. Sorry. But there was a time where the spiritualist movement was starting to pick up traction. You know, I mean, the Fox sisters aren't associated with, I mean, the spiritualist movement existed without the Fox sisters, but they kind of catapulted it into mainstream attention, and just made this huge movement. And a lot of people based their movement and progression of the spiritualist movement because of the Fox sisters, who at the time, they weren't very old, early teens, but apparently that they had a house that was haunted, and they could communicate with it by knocks and taps. That's one reason that comes about, where people like, then you hear. So, that's just, but come to find out, though, apparently it was a prank that they used to tie, like, an apple to a string or something when they're laying in their bed. They used to creep out their mother and pull on the string so the apple would hit the floor. Obviously, it would make a thunking noise, and, you know, they couldn't figure out what it was. They ended up ruining a guy's life pretty much at the time by saying he was a murderer because their house was haunted, and the previous owner or someone had murdered someone, and their ghost, it's... Anyway, but people thought that, and people used to come and experience what they did. They'd make knocking noises, like 2 for yes or 3, you know, whatever it was. But people would experience, you know, obviously all the lights were off most of the time, and it was dark. But somehow people just took off with it. It's gave it all this attention, blah, blah, blah. And they were investigated many times and found to be fraudulent, but yet people kept pushing this movement and the Fox sisters. And eventually, like, this was during the time, like, Houdini was very big in going around to all these people that claimed to be mediums and psychics and disproving them, and discrediting them as being frauds. And most of them, and there's no evidence that any of them were real. They were, everything back then was fraudulent. So why do we base information on well-known frauds? I mean, that's dumbfounding to me, to be honest. I have to look at the dates, but it was like 40 years later, around the 1900s or so, right, you know, that the Fox sisters came out and gave a public demonstration and wrote and signed a witness, is it a witness statement, or whatever. They made a big press thing with, at the time, like 2,000 people attended, and they demonstrated how they manipulated everyone. And they came out and said they were a fraud. During this time, the two sisters were kind of had a little quarrel going on, or, you know, between themselves anyway, and kept calling each other out, and you know, whatever. They're, I don't know, family issues. But they did. They made a big press release. There's like 2,000 people in attendance, and they exhibited how they did it, and they showed everyone that we are frauds. They learned how to like snap their toes. I can't make my toes snap like that, but for like the knocks and rappings and what they were cracking. I don't want to say that they're knuckles, you know, but they were like snapping their toes somehow. I don't know, but apparently they demonstrated this. And yet the figure, like, and there's a big thing where most of it they said they'd be sitting there with someone in a room and saying they're talking to someone, and they'd snap their toes, obviously. And people have audible, would it be hallucination? Is that the right word? Where they're like, oh yeah, I hear it. I felt someone tap me on the shoulder when, yeah. No, they didn't though. It was just what their mind was perceiving, and because the Fox sisters were tapping, like people will feed into that type of energy, and their minds just kind of go crazy with information. But the point is that the Fox sisters, they proved themselves to be frauds, and there's many people that had investigated them and called them out for being frauds to begin with, and came up with pretty much the very same conclusions that proved to be right. Then obviously a lot of people were mortified and horrified, at this information, because especially the spiritualist movement that had based, that kind of catapulted because of the Fox sisters and their claims. So, I mean, it's interesting to me. Like, the entire spiritualist movement and how it just widespread and picked up momentum here in the United States was based on a fraud. And people are still into it. For instance, also, let's get into spirit photography. The idea is that you can capture spirits on film with your camera. Click, 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 click. That got popular this was discovered, spirit photography was discovered by William H. Mumler, however you pronounce it, Mumler, in the 1860s. Also, complete fraud. What he was doing was, at the time, how cameras worked, or at least the one he was using, and I have no idea how he wasn't called out on it before. Maybe cameras liked the attention that they were getting for their cameras, or whatever, because obviously whoever made the camera could have been like, excuse me. Or maybe, I don't know. I wasn't alive during that time, so I don't know what the hysteria was about. But, sorry, my throat is really sore. This stuff helps wonders for some reason. Euro water. But anyway, let's just get to, he was taking pictures, and the way his camera worked, it uses, at the time, used those glass slides that you put in and clean off or whatever. But somehow he found out, he took a self-portrait and realized there's another person in the picture with him. But then he found out, that obviously wasn't there at the time, but he found out it's because he didn't clean off the glass slide completely. He took, so it was a double negative. It was imposing the previous picture onto the new picture. And he got extremely famous for doing this and being able to photograph spirits. This went on for years. And he eventually got caught and called out because he had taken a photo of a famous person and used them as the exposure for a spirit. I mean, whoever that famous person was during that time. I don't remember exactly who. But obviously that person was still very well alive and well. So that's how he ended up getting caught eventually and called out for it. So spirit photography is a complete lie. There was never spirit photography. It was completely made up. It was based on a complete fraud. But yet that one of the main pieces of equipment in today with any ghost hunter or any investigator is a camera. Now, you would say during the Victorian ages when post-mortem photography was popular, you would think that you would catch the most spirits during that time period, because obviously they were photographing dead people on a normal basis for the most part. The only argument you would be able to have against that versus now is how cameras have developed over time, with their speeds and everything. Like before, okay, you could say the development time was so slow that obviously a ghost isn't going to sit there forever. Just take my picture. Take my picture. Take my picture. But so I mean, you could base that argument that now today's cameras are much quicker to capture an image, and you don't have to sit there forever. So if something's moving fast, it's got the ability to capture it. But it still doesn't help the fact that it was all based completely on a fraud. And that's how it is with most any pieces of equipment today used by ghost hunters or investigators. And I'm not disproving or disclaiming anything. Like I said, I mean, you could argue that cameras are so advanced nowadays that they're able to capture stuff quickly, so maybe they're more accurate or more whatever you want. But now also you have photo manipulation and editing that's easy to do. But I mean, also, unless you send the raw file, which people don't realize, like if you send me a photo but you're not sending me the raw file, I'm not going to give your picture a second look. To be honest, I'm not. Send me the raw file, because that holds all the information. It tells me your aperture, it tells me your settings, it tells me if the picture was edited, even contrast, the white balance. It tells me everything about when that photo was shot, and if you manipulated it afterward. All that information is stored. You can't hide that in a raw photo or a raw file. So if you want validation of a photo, don't show me or send me a photo that you edited. Just saying. What else is there? Oh yes, the handy dandy voice recorder for EVPs. Electronic voice phenomena. Goodness. Which I think actually originated over, I don't know if it's Sweden, Norway, somewhere, some other country. Some guy claimed to be able to have all these recordings and voices that shouldn't have been there. And then it just kind of grew from there. It's all a bit daunting and boring, but interesting to know. Like, I think everyone should know this, especially in the paranormal field. This is all information that you should be aware of. My problem with EVPs are like this guy right here. Great recorder. There's nothing wrong with it. I think this is a wonderful recorder. Digital, awesome. The problem is with this also can be that it is too awesome. What do I mean by that? For instance, I went out, me and my fiance at the time, Maybe we weren't even engaged then. But anyway, the point is, my wife and I had at one point gone out somewhere because we like to go out walking every once in a while through. I personally find graveyards peaceful. They're relaxing. They're quiet usually. Whatever. But I'm also into the paranormal, so we took the recorder with to test it out. I hadn't really used it on anything before, so I was like, all right, let's go. The problem was with this recorder, it picked up so much sound. Sounds that were not audibly noticeable to me while I was there, but while I was listening to it, I'm, there's a highway a mile or two this way, there's another highway, a few mile, whatever. It's not in close proximity. It would take me a while to get to the highway. It'd be like a 5-minute drive one way or the other. So it was probably, a mile or two, I'd say, in either direction. But I couldn't audibly hear the sound. But on my recorder, you could hear all the traffic on the highway. I mean, really, it was that ridiculous. Like it was like, you could hear tires hitting some part of a road, and you could hear all the traffic going over it. You could hear. It was. So I mean, great as these are, you're always going to hear sounds that you didn't hear while you were presently there, because the microphones are designed to pick up sounds and be more sensitive than your ears are. So when you play it back, they can distinguish and amplify sounds that were not noticeable to you at the time. I even heard an airplane go by. But when I was there, I was recording also. I think I was just using my phone. But you couldn't hear any of those sounds on my phone recording, and I didn't respond to them because I didn't physically hear them myself while I was there. So that's another problem also with microphones and stuff. And people are like, oh, look, did you hear that sound? I didn't hear it when I was there. And also because a lot of ghost hunters like to go out at night. Which there are valid reasons for doing so, because there's less contamination. There's less people out and about. There's, less interference, but that's not necessarily also always a good thing, especially when it comes to traveling sound. Uninterrupted sounds travel further than they would any other times during the day. So my point is, though, you will always, no matter what anyone says, pick up sounds that were not audibly clear to you while you were present at that point in time, because of the sensitivity of the microphones, which isn't always bad. I'm just saying. I've heard weird things that, sometimes you can only take information on face value also, because like a recorder or a picture itself isn't actual evidence, as people like to claim that it is. Much as I would love for it to be, people have to realize it is not. You can tell me all about it all you want. You can write whatever you want. You can document whatever you want. Your recording and your photographs are not evidence. Because if you cannot recreate an instance, one, it is not scientific. If you can't get the same result over and over and over, if you can't just go, look, there's a ghost there, click, look, there's a ghost there, click, look, and this is what you have to do. If you don't do this, then it's not there, click, see it's not there. Do this, click, it's there. If you can't do that, then it's not scientific. I'm sorry, but it's not, and you have to understand that. You can gain a reputation, and people can validate your findings or take it by word that it's authentic and true, that you wouldn't fake it, but there's no evidence saying that it isn't either. But it's not evidence. It can't be. It's a personal experience, and people can take your word on it, which is great. But that's what I want people to understand. It in itself is not evidence. And people have argued that, and I'm trying to explain to you why it's not. And also, don't send me pictures of orbs. Orbs, just, that doesn't matter how cool the orb looks. It can be a cool picture. Maybe it did something in the picture itself, and it looks neat. But you have to realize also that your orb is already automatically discredited because of the amount of natural and explainable conditions that can cause orbs and create them. It has nothing to do with authenticating it, whether it's paranormal or not paranormal, because the odds are that it is not, no matter what you believe. There's too many variables and conditions that can recreate the exact same experience within a photo. That's why orbs, that's why a lot of people automatically discredit them. You've got these people in these groups and circles or whatever that completely believe it, say, oh, there's orbs. Yeah, well, there's orbs always around this person. Well, you know what? Maybe they don't wash their hair. Maybe they got bad dandruff. I don't know. I can't tell you. But the point is that it doesn't fall into paranormal. There's too many things. There's moistures, there's dust, there's hair, there's pollen. There's just dander. There's so many things. There's, bugs. It's been created by bugs before. You just have to understand. There's just too many plausible explanations for your orbs in a photo for it to be considered paranormal. That's just how it is. Whether it is or not doesn't matter. I'd like to talk to you about photography in general. Please, I tell everyone this. If you're going out into a field, if you want to be an expert on it, you want to do whatever it is you say that you're doing, and you want to be an expert and present information professionally, if you're using equipment that you do not understand, you're discrediting yourself. Just take basic photography classes somewhere. No, I don't care where you go, what you do. I use various methods. I've looked up YouTube. I've done the New York Institute of Photography. I didn't finish that course, and I don't recommend it. I won't get into all that. Blah 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 blah. It's a waste of money. You're wasting your money. Go somewhere local. Go find a local college. Go find somewhere where you can interact with people. You can get the information you need to know. And I was comparing the New York Institute of Photography compared to YouTube. You may as well just use YouTube. Main things you need to know are your focal points, your aperture and f-stops, which is pretty much the same thing. You need to know different lenses distort things differently. You've got wide-angle lenses, you got 35 millimeter, you got, and then you've got your f-stops in between there. obviously one being, like, if you ever see those photos where someone is in focus, but the background's all blurry because they're using a lens, but they're using a wide aperture. So there's more light coming in. They're seeing you, you know. Anyway, I'm not going to get into all the details because, honestly, it's all circumstantial to the situation that you're in, depending on your aperture and f-stops and all this other stuff. And you need to learn about how cameras work, how the light's reflected into the lenses, how there's not only reflections, but refraction, which is, the camera's catching a reflection, and the reflection is refracting light back into the camera lens. You got lens flare, you got all these instances and all these things that you need to be aware of and know how to use your camera. Because I've seen many pictures where I'm looking at it and going, that you have to understand visually how cameras work. I'm not going to call anyone out. I'm not going to do anything. I'm just saying, understand it. There are a few groups and people that I highly recommend that you keep up with and information. And, I'm not saying don't go out and do paranormal stuff. I'm saying that doing the same thing over and over, and that everyone else is doing over and over, and not getting any information. They're not capturing anything new. They're not adding anything new to the paranormal. They're not helping anything or anyone. I won't get into all the beliefs behind it, and demons and spirits and people and what are other ones? That the stationary ghost, residual, intelligent, demons. Oh, demons! Everyone's afraid of demons. If you have a demonic case or demonic haunting that you claim is demonic, please inform me. And if I can make it there, I would love to. I mean, honestly, if you've got a demonic case, I'm on it. I'm not going to boot the boogeyman out. I want to document it. I want actual solid evidence. I'm not going to sit there and tell you should be afraid of the demonic haunting because bull hockey. If there's something that people claim is demonic, and usually those types of hauntings have the most activity surrounding them. Obviously, as an investigator or a ghost hunter or a researcher, whatever you want to say, that is where I'm going to get the most evidence from, if there's any evidence to gather. Just saying. So if you have a demonic case, let me know, because I will bring all the gadgets that I can and capture what information I can or not. Then you got people that are like, oh, you need to say a prayer, you need to sage, you need to do this and smudge, and always do whatever you feel is your preference, but it has no bearings on the paranormal field itself. There is no ultimate information or answers or protection or anything to even protect yourself from, because it's all bull hockey. And that's coming from me. I have experienced many things that I cannot explain, which is why I have an interest in the paranormal. But I don't pretend to know what those things are. I don't say the paranormal or dead people. I've never experienced that. I've got no solid information or evidence that proves that one way or the other. There are some activity that seems to represent human intelligence to an extent, or what a person would do, but there's no information that it is a person, if that makes any sense. Now, I've studied many things. I've studied and looked into the history and extensively into religions, and like I said, theories and methods that are used today, methods that aren't used. Now you got these ghost boxes, which I would be amazed if you could actually clearly just hold a conversation, not just pick up a word that you find relevant to the information that you have. And sometimes you create words out of sounds that are relevant because that's how our minds work, even visually. Our minds have to make sense of what we're seeing. So if you're seeing something, just random stuff, whatever that's called, patterns or whatever, you will start to see faces or whatever, because that's what your mind is made to do. You try to make sense of what you're seeing. Same thing with audible information. When you're hearing a lot of background noises and sounds or whatever, your brain will ignore certain information and also take in information, and if it doesn't understand it, it will try to make you perceive it in something that you do understand. If that makes any sense. Like, let's say you live around an area and there's constantly trains or planes or whatever, and generally they're pretty loud and annoying. But you, being in that environment, can actually get used to the noise, and you ended up tuning it out. You don't even notice it anymore. It blends into the background. It doesn't become something that sticks out to you. And that's just one example of how your mind itself just kind of ignores or takes information and tries to create something that you understand. Maybe that's a very, very vague and bad example, but the point is that your mind, whether you want to admit it or not, does things and transmits information that doesn't make sense to you. And it wires it and tries to make sense for you. So that's another thing to know, that we are not, and it doesn't matter who you are. I mean, you're not immune to those types of situations and that information. It's just how we are as human. But anyway, but like I said, you've got like all these voice boxes and everything. There's some people I just really hate when it comes to this area of the field. I mean, honestly, I mean, just it's like, why are you popularizing this type of information? Especially when you have all these things that are going on, and sounds and background noise, that you get this radio frequency that you're picking up phonetic sounds, which aren't full enunciations. It's the phonetics of a sound. It's like just noises, like little parts of information. But if you string enough of those sounds together, you can hear words, and it doesn't matter what language. Phonetics, you need very few of them to create pretty much all known language. I wish I wish I was smarter to be able to explain that better to you. But honestly, just look up phonetic sounds and how they're used, and how you can translate a certain string of phonetic sounds, and you don't even need a lot to create every single known word in pretty much any known language. So when you have people listening to all these radio scanning, it doesn't matter how fast it's going. The faster it's going, the more phonons you're going to get. You know, little noises, those little hesitant noises. So you're going to hear sounds, and eventually you will pick up words. And it does, like I said, it doesn't matter how fast it's going. It doesn't matter if it's going in reverse. It doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. It doesn't even have to be actual voices or music that's creating phonons. Just noise itself will create phonons. It doesn't have to be from physical speech that you're hearing them. Just another reason and a bit of information that you should be aware of. I know people are like, oh man, you're such a down. I'm not. I want to push the paranormal. I want people to do something new. I don't care what it is. Try something new. Why keep using information and things that are not beneficial? You can do it as a hobby, be like, oh, that's cool because you want to experience it. And I get that. I do. I totally get that. Goodness. There's another method that I won't really talk about, but there's a local group, Dan Norvell and his group of people, and I know he kind of wrote a book. I think it's self-published. I'd have to get the information on it, but I recommend it. Look it up. Look into him. Follow him. But they kind of went over a bit of a theory, but one that I had already been kind of planning on in my own mind to an extent. I never really went all out with the information. I had wrote a little bit about it and kind of covered it. And I'm not going to give anything away because, I want to see what someone else can do with the information. Someone else that's got the time or the ability to get the resources to do that. That person is not me. I don't have the time and resources at the moment to do most of the things I would love to do. I just don't. But, from frequencies and everything else, you just gotta just try something new sometimes. With that being said, there's a lot of things, like I said, filmography. So I really recommend that you follow people like Dan Norvell. I think you can find him on Facebook as the Dan Norvell Project. Ghost Hunter Dan Norvell. I don't. Sorry, I don't retain a lot of things like I should. But also, that's partly my fault because I do this. I've got so many pages and channels and different types of information out everywhere, and it's hard for me to keep track of it all. So I'm trying to keep everything in one spot now. And eventually I'll, as I able to keep track of stuff, I will branch out into other stuff like my photography and everything else. Well, I'll be separate, and hopefully I'll be able to keep track of it and keep up with it, because that's really hard for me to do at the moment. What else is there to talk about? Fright Fest. Eric Werner. Fort Wayne, Indiana, 2020. Look into that. Keep that information in the back burner. Especially, it's not necessarily paranormal. Some of it's surrounding paranormal. A lot of it's like filmography and horror. And just weird, cool stuff. I have no part in it, so I can't really say a whole lot about it or anything, but The way it's going, though, it sounds pretty neat, especially if you're in the film and everything else. I mean, go for it. Unfortunately, it sounds like it's going to be a little bit too late in the season for me to attend, because anything September and onward, it's pretty much a no-go. I've got from, what is it, about June to now, or just this prior week, within the year, that I can get out and do stuff. Sorry, I'm really hot, coughing, my throat is sore. I'm trying not to cough and gag all over. It's making it worse trying to hold it in. You know what I mean? My goodness. Sorry. Anyway, I kind of lost track of where I was going, to be honest. I did. I lost track. Yeah. All right, but that's it from me. Keep it classy. Know your shit. All right. Have a good one.